The morning Michael left was no different from any other, or at least, it seemed that way to his wife, Clara, and their son, Ayo. The sun peeked through the warm curtains of their small but cozy home in the heart of Lagos. Clara was in the kitchen, frying akara for breakfast. The soft sizzle of the oil was familiar, almost soothing, as she hummed the tune that Ayo, still half asleep, heard from his room. Michael, however, had a different plan. He had been awake long before sunrise, pacing the length of their living room, his heart heavy with unspoken worries. The debts had piled up, one after the other, choking the life out of him. He had tried to find a solution, but each time he reached out for help, the door was slammed in his face. He had lost his job months ago but hadn't found the courage to tell Clara. Clara and Ayo were everything to him, but as he packed a small bag that morning, his heart was already stilled with his decision. In his mind, he justified it as an act of mercy. He believed they would be better off without him. Clara wouldn't have to worry about his debts, and maybe they could find a way to survive without the dead weight he had become. When the clock hit 6 a.m., Michael walked out the front door, quietly locking it behind him. The only sound was the soft clinking of his keys as he dropped them into the mailbox, a final act of closure. He drove off in the family car, disappearing down the road, leaving behind everything he had once known. When Clara and Ayo returned home that evening, everything seemed off. Clara opened the front door, only to be greeted by an eerie silence. The house, which once held the warmth of their family, felt cold and abandoned. As they stepped inside, Clara's eyes widened in disbelief. The living room was empty. The couch where Ayo usually watched TV was gone. The dining table, the pictures on the wall, the curtains, all of it was gone. "Ayo, stay outside for a moment," Clara whispered, her voice shaking. Ayo, sensing his mother's fear, complied, standing at the doorstep. Clara walked through the house in a daze. The bedrooms were stripped bare, the kitchen empty. She stood in the center of what used to be their life, her breath quickening as the realization hit her. Michael had left them. She collapsed on the floor, her hands trembling as tears streamed down her face. Ayo, still standing outside, peeked in and saw his mother in a state of despair. Without thinking, he ran to her, his small arms wrapping around her shoulders. "Mom, what happened? Where's Dad?" Ayo's voice was laced with confusion. Clara couldn't answer. She just held him, clutching him tightly as if her embrace could shield him from the cold truth that was now their reality. Days turned into weeks. Clara tried to put on a brave face for Ayo, but the weight of Michael's abandonment crushed her spirit. They couldn't afford to stay in the house for long. Michael had left them with no money, no savings, no way to pay the rent. Soon, the landlord came knocking, and Clara knew their time was up. Clara packed what little they had left, and they moved out of the only home Ayo had ever known. With nowhere to go, they wandered the streets. Each night, they found a different corner to sleep in, but the cold, hard pavement offered little comfort. Clara made sure Ayo ate before she did, though the scraps of food she managed to beg from strangers were barely enough to fill their bellies. Ayo, who had always been a lively child, became quiet and withdrawn. His laughter, once the soundtrack of their home, had been replaced by the hollow silence of hunger and fear. Clara noticed the change in him and it broke her heart. But what could she do? With no job and no prospects, she felt helpless. One evening, as Clara sat on a bench in a local park, an old neighbor named Mr. Taiwo approached her. He had heard of their plight and took pity on them. He was a tall man in his 60s, with a kind face and a reputation for being helpful. Clara thought of him as a lifeline, someone who could offer a solution. "Clara, I may have a job for you," Mr. Taiwo said gently. His tone was sympathetic, but there was something behind his eyes, something Clara couldn't quite place. Clara's heart leapt at the prospect of a job. A way to earn money and get back on her feet. Really? What kind of job? She asked eagerly. Well, it's unconventional. But it pays well, Mr. Taiwo said hesitantly, avoiding eye contact. Desperation had dulled Clara's instincts, and she didn't question it. She simply followed Mr. Taiwo, hoping this would be the break she needed. The small clinic they entered didn't look like a place for legitimate work. The air was sterile, and the walls were painted an unsettling shade of white. Clara felt a knot tighten in her stomach as they entered, but she forced herself to remain hopeful. Inside, they were met by a doctor who explained the job, an opportunity to sell one of her kidneys for 500,000 naira. Clara's heart sank, and her blood ran cold. The doctor spoke casually, as if this was a common transaction. It's a simple procedure. You'll be compensated well, and you'll save someone's life. Clara recoiled in horror. Was this what she had been reduced to? Selling her own body to survive? At first, Clara refused outright. She stormed out of the clinic, tears streaming down her face as she clutched Ayo's hand tightly. But as the weeks dragged on, their situation grew even more dire. Ayo had to stop attending school. Clara could see the sadness in his eyes every time they passed by his classmates in their uniforms. He had been a bright student, always at the top of his class, but now his future seemed uncertain. She watched her son wither away under the weight of their suffering. It was in these darkest moments that Clara realized she had no choice. She had to do whatever it took to give Ayo a future, even if it meant sacrificing a part of herself. With a heavy heart, Clara returned to the clinic. She signed the papers and prepared herself for the surgery. The day before the operation, she held Ayo close, her mind racing with fears of what could go wrong. But in her heart, she knew this was the only way. The surgery was a success. Clara woke up in a sterile room, weak and groggy, but alive. Beside her was an envelope containing 500,000 naira, more money than she had ever seen in her life. She held it in her trembling hands, knowing the price she had paid. With the money, Clara rented a small apartment and used the rest to open a modest business selling provisions at the local market. She poured all of her energy into the business, working from dawn till dusk, determined to build a stable life for herself and Ayo. Slowly but surely, their lives began to improve. Ayo was able to return to school, and Clara's business grew, allowing them to move from barely surviving to living with a sense of security they hadn't felt in years. Ayo, seeing his mother's sacrifice, became even more determined to succeed. He studied hard and eventually graduated from university with honors. His success filled Clara's heart with pride. Her sacrifice had not been in vain. As Ayo grew older, his relationship with his mother remained strong. He never forgot what she had done for him, and he made sure to take care of her in return. When he got his first job, he bought Clara a new house, a beautiful home in a quiet neighborhood where she could finally rest after years of hardship. But as Ayo's life flourished, a new figure entered their world, Chika, a beautiful and ambitious woman whom Ayo had fallen in love with. At first, Clara was happy for her son. Chika seemed like a good match. But soon, cracks began to appear in the relationship. Chika was jealous of the close bond Ayo shared with his mother. She couldn't understand why Ayo was so devoted to Clara, always putting her first. Chika wanted all of Ayo's attention, and she resented the fact that he would drop everything to care for his mother. Initially, Chika tried to mask her displeasure. She would make passive-aggressive comments about Clara's influence on Ayo. "You know, Ayo, sometimes I wonder if your mother's influence is holding you back," she'd say, her voice laced with subtle criticism. But as time went on, Chika's attempts to break their bond grew more overt. She began to demand more financial support from Ayo. She insisted that he prioritize her needs over his mother's. "I need more money for our wedding plans, Ayo. We can't keep postponing things because of your mother's needs," Chika would argue. Ayo was torn between his love for Chika and his sense of duty to Clara. He tried to balance both, but Chika's demands became more insistent. She would orchestrate scenarios where Ayo had to choose between spending time with Clara or fulfilling her demands. One evening, Chika invited Ayo to a fancy dinner, insisting he leave Clara alone at home. When Ayo hesitated, saying he wanted to spend the evening with his mother, Chika's frustration boiled over. "Every time we try to have a special moment, your mother comes first. Do you even realize how unfair this is to us?" she snapped. Ayo was taken aback. He had never seen this side of Chika before. He tried to explain that Clara had sacrificed so much for him and that he couldn't just ignore her needs. But Chika wouldn't hear it. She accused him of being selfish and manipulative, and the argument ended with Chika storming out of the house. Over the following weeks, Chika's attempts to drive a wedge between Ayo and Clara became more aggressive. She started creating petty conflicts, criticizing Clara for every little thing. She would complain about Clara's cooking, her house, and even her way of speaking. Chika subtly undermined Ayo's respect and love for his mother, planting seeds of doubt about her intentions and character. One day, Chika went as far as to make a scene during a family dinner. She arrived at Ayo's apartment unannounced and found Clara preparing a meal. Chika, visibly irate, accused Clara of trying to control Ayo's life. "I'm tired of playing second fiddle to your mother's whims," she declared loudly. "Why do you let her dictate our lives?" The dinner turned into a heated argument. Ayo, caught between the two women he cared about, tried to calm the situation but found himself growing increasingly frustrated. He couldn't understand how Chika could be so cruel, especially after everything Clara had done for them. The tension in the room was palpable, and Clara's eyes were filled with hurt. After that night, the relationship between Chika and Clara became even more strained. Clara withdrew into herself, refusing to engage with Chika. She spent most of her time alone, focusing on her business and avoiding any unnecessary interactions. Ayo was devastated, feeling like he was losing both the woman he loved and the mother who had sacrificed so much for him. Despite the growing tension, Ayo still tried to maintain a balance. He would visit his mother regularly, though the visits were often marked by uncomfortable silence and strained conversations. Clara tried to put on a brave face, but her sadness was evident. She missed the days when their family was whole and peaceful. One fateful evening, Chika made a final, drastic attempt to sever the bond between Ayo and Clara. She confronted Ayo with an ultimatum. "It's either me or her," she said, her voice cold and resolute. "If you can't choose me, then I'm done." Ayo's heart was torn apart by Chika's demand. He loved her deeply, but the thought of abandoning his mother was unbearable. He took a long, painful look at his life and realized that he was being forced into a position where he had to choose between two people who mattered deeply to him. In a moment of clarity, Ayo made his decision. He chose to stand by his mother. He explained to Chika that his loyalty to Clara wasn't negotiable. He couldn't abandon the person who had given up everything for him, who had been his rock through all of life's hardships. Chika's reaction was explosive. She yelled, threw things around, and stormed out of Ayo's life, leaving him to deal with the wreckage of their relationship. The decision was painful, but Ayo felt a sense of relief. He had made the right choice, even though it meant losing someone he thought he could spend his life with. After Chika left, Ayo and Clara's relationship began to heal. They spent more time together, and the bond between them grew stronger. Ayo supported Clara's business, helping her with finances and marketing. Clara, in turn, found solace in seeing her son flourish and succeed. Their lives were not perfect, but they were theirs. Clara's sacrifices had not been in vain. Ayo went on to achieve great success in his career, and Clara continued to be a source of strength and wisdom in his life. Their home was filled with laughter again, and their hearts were mended by the trials they had overcome. Years later, as Ayo looked back on the challenges they had faced, he knew that their story was one of love, sacrifice, and resilience. Michael, who had left in the early days of their hardship, never returned. But Ayo and Clara had found their own way to rebuild their lives, one step at a time. They learned that true family bonds are forged through trials and that love, no matter how tested, could endure. And so, their story became one of hope, a testament to the strength of a mother's love and a son's unwavering commitment to the one who had always been there for him. As the years passed, life for Clara and Ayo settled into a routine. Clara's business continued to thrive, and Ayo's career was flourishing. They had rebuilt their lives from the ground up, learning to find joy and fulfillment despite the hardships they had endured. Their bond was unbreakable, strengthened by the trials they had faced together. One afternoon, while Clara was walking in her shop, a familiar face appeared at the door. It was Michael. His appearance was a stark contrast to the man who had left them years ago. His once vibrant face was now lined with age and regret. Clara's heart sank as she saw him, and her mind raced with memories of the pain he had caused. Michael approached Clara with a hesitant step, his eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and apprehension. "Clara," he began softly, "I know it's been a long time, and I don't expect anything from you. I just needed to come back and try to explain." Clara looked at him, her emotions a whirlwind of anger and confusion. "Why now, Michael? After everything that's happened, why come back?" she asked, her voice trembling. Michael took a deep breath, his gaze steady. "I came back because I've been living with this guilt for so long. Heart pounding. I thought leaving you and Ayo would protect you from my failures. I was overwhelmed with but I see now how wrong I was. I lost my job and wanted to tell you why I left the truth, to try to find some form of closure. I thought you'd be better off without me, that my absence would somehow make things easier for you. But I was wrong. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you by abandoning you." Tears welled up in Michael's eyes as he spoke. "I've tried to make sense of my actions, but nothing can undo the pain I caused. I've come to terms with the fact that I can't make things right, but I wanted you to know that I am truly sorry. I've been living with this regret, and I needed to ask for your forgiveness." Clara stood in silence, the weight of Michael's words crashing over her. The years of hardship, the nights of worry, and the sacrifices she had made for Ayo all rushed back. She had built a new life, one that didn't include Michael, and she had come to accept that. Ayo arrived shortly after, his expression a mix of curiosity and apprehension. When he saw Michael, he felt a familiar surge of anger and hurt. The man who had left them in their darkest hour was standing before him, seeking forgiveness that seemed impossible to grant. Michael's eyes met Ayo's with a deep sorrow. "Ayo, I know I can never make up for what I've done. I've seen the success you've achieved, and I'm proud of you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I needed to tell you how sorry I am." Ayo's anger flared, and he struggled to find the right words. "You can't just come back after all these years and expect everything to be okay. You abandoned us when we needed you most. You caused so much pain and suffering. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for that." Michael nodded, his shoulders slumping in resignation. "I understand. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted to make sure you know that I am truly sorry for everything. I'll leave you to your lives. I hope you can find peace." With those final words, Michael turned and walked away, disappearing down the street. Clara and Ayo watched him leave, the finality of the moment settling heavily on their hearts. In the days that followed, Clara and Ayo struggled with the emotions stirred by Michael's visit. They found themselves reflecting on the pain of the past and the strength they had gained from it. The bitterness that had lingered began to dissipate, replaced by a deeper understanding of their own resilience. Clara and Ayo continued to move forward, focusing on the lives they had built together. The pain of Michael's departure remained a part of their history, but it no longer defined them. They found solace in the strength of their bond and the love they shared. They made peace with the past, acknowledging the hurt but also recognizing the growth that had come from it. Michael's return had brought closure, allowing them to finally let go of the anger and resentment that had held them back. As they sat together, reflecting on their journey, Clara and Ayo knew that their story was one of survival and strength. They had faced the storm and emerged stronger, their lives enriched by the love and sacrifices that had shaped them. The past was behind them, and they looked to the future with hope and determination. Their lives were no longer defined by the pain of abandonment, but by the love and resilience that had carried them through. They had found their peace, and with it, a renewed sense of purpose and happiness.